It's our pleasure to welcome the Hall of Famer, the great Whitey Herzog. Whitey, great to be with you. How are you, sir?
How you doing, Frank? Yeah, I'm doing along pretty good. Looking forward to my 90th birthday.
Wow, when is that, by the way?
On November 9th, same year as Bob Gibson, Walter Olson, Jim Riggleman. There's a lot of us born on November 9th.
Wow. How are you celebrating? Would it be a big bash?
I don't think so. When you get 90, you don't have many old friends along. All my baseball buddies, basketball buddies from New Athens, all of them have passed away except one fellow that was on the basketball team. So, there's not many people to celebrate with.
Yeah. Whitey, how lucky are you to be still as sharp as you are? I mean, your baseball mind is as good as it's ever been, right?
Well, I think it is. I follow baseball tremendously. Every night it seems like I don't get to bed till 11. I try to watch a West Coast game. Sometimes I watch 5 or 6 innings and get tired, so then I go to bed. But I've been a very fortunate man that my wife and I are still living in our home, and she don't cook as much as she used to, but we're eating and we're doing well. So we've been a very, very fortunate twosome.
I got to ask you, when you see this Shohei Ohtani throw a ball 100 miles an hour and hit one 500 feet, what do you think? Have you ever seen anything like him?
Well, this is funny. When you scout, and years ago, if you were a high school player and you were a pitcher, if you were right-handed, you played shortstop and hit cleanup when you didn't pitch. And when you were left-handed, you played center field or first base and hit third or fourth when you didn't pitch. I never did understand why pitchers got into pro ball and all of a sudden they couldn't hit. Of course, I can understand that more now because the National League is the only one with the pitcher hitting, and I'm sure that that's going to change next year, So I don't think there's going to be too many Ohtanis come along, but this guy has really been amazing. When you think about the Angels have lost Trout, the number one player in baseball, maybe not anymore with what Tatis has been and now what Ohtani's done. Frank, it's just amazing. And I'm sure in the next agreement after this next season, when they negotiate, we're going to have the DH in both leagues, so we won't see the pitchers hitting anymore.
Whitey, this is Tim Woodburn. It's a real pleasure to speak with you. I've been a big Cardinals fan all of your years in managing the Cardinals. When I started following them in the mid-'70s, and it's great to have you on the program today. I'm just curious. I was doing some research prior to this show, and the Cardinals' team batting average is .230. They're dead last in the National League in on-base percentage. And I'm just curious as your thoughts in general on the shift, and if you were managing in an era where the shift was as prevalent as it was, how much would you be inclined to not necessarily force, but to basically call for a bunt and to generate offense regardless of who's hitting?
Well, actually, the rules of baseball are everybody's in fair territory. It doesn't say where they have to be in fair territory. The catcher's the only one that's operating in foul territory. The Cardinal problem is when you get individuals that the shift is bothering, that individual has to figure out a way to beat that shift, whether it's bunting, whether it's hitting to the opposite field, and all these things. The Cardinal problem, when you say some of the stats, is they're still striking out once out of every 4 at-bats as a team. Now, I don't know whether, when you look at the Cardinal stats every day, whether the pitchers' strikeouts count in there. That would cause it to be a little bit higher. But when you strike out, you don't advance runners unless they're going on a 3-2 pitch on a steal or something. And, Casey Stengel told me one time that nobody ever got a raise for striking out. And we used to really work on that starting in Class D baseball. I'm talking about when you started in the Yankee, Cardinal, or Dodger chain, which were one of the 3 best organizations as far as having young people come through the minor leagues at that time. We had to take a strike until the tying run got to the plate, starting in the seventh inning. We had to choke up on the bat and make contact with two strikes to put the ball in play, and those things aren't happening anymore. People are up there with runners on second and no outs, swinging from their tails, striking out on curveballs on 3 and 2 in the dirt, where they could take a walk and make it easier for the next guy to get an RBI. So right now, when you look at the Cardinals, they're 8 games behind Milwaukee, 7 on the lost side, and I think a lot of Milwaukee's problems going to start with the outfielder, Yelich. You know, if his back gets well and he starts hitting like he was capable for the 2 years and even comes close to that, I think Milwaukee, with their starting pitching, and of course Hader, are going to be, it depends how many games they win. But 8 games back, 7 on the lost side with 90 to play is only a bad week or two and a good week for you. And I think the Cardinals haven't really put what I call a hot streak away until Mike went to having Redmond leading off and the right fielder, Carlson, who was playing center for Bader at the time, hitting second, along with Goldie. And of course, you know, we got to hope that O'Neill comes back. He's been really a good surprise. He's had 15 home runs now for a month, and he's better than that. But you know, he's still got to cut down on strikeouts. He's still striking out once out of every 3 at bats or so, and he's got to put the ball in play. You know, it's amazing the balls that he tops with 2 strikes down the third base line with his speed. He beats all of them out. So he has had some scratch hits that have been very valuable to the offense along the way.
What about Paul DeJong, who was an all-star, who hit 30 home runs? Now, I know he hit home runs in back-to-back games to finish up things in Chicago this weekend, but what's gone wrong with him? What do you see there?
Well, the only thing I can say is he's better than that. And, you know, he's got lightning in that barrel of his bat. And I think selection has been a problem for him. I watch him, and I almost, when I watch the Cardinal games, I think every time he comes to bat, he's going to hit a double or a home run. I feel that way about him yet. Defensively, he's been a very solid player now for 4+ years. He's been with the Cardinals. He doesn't let the hitting part of it affect his defensive game. And I root for him. Well, he's got, 10 or 11 home runs. He's got 26 RBIs, and, you know, he's missed some time, and I'm looking for him this year. The fact that Mike does give him rest because Soto's played very well, I think he's going to have a better half than he's had. But I am looking for him to be better. You know, I just can't understand when now we've played. I got 70 games left, so we played 92 games or 90 games, and you know, he's got to put that ball in play, and I think that we're going to see a good second half from him. I'm looking forward to, and I think that's going to be a big help to the Cardinals.
Whitey, when you see Alex Reyes put up near perfect numbers as a closer and save opportunities, and you realize that this is the 9th year he's been in the organization, he's been hurt several times, would you be inclined, if you were like a dual GM manager like you were back in the day, would you be inclined to want to keep him as a closer for his entire career? You know, Mariano Rivera made starter money, and he only had to pitch 1/3 of their innings, you know, over the course of his career, and he's been so good at it, and he's got such an injury history. And I know he has publicly said he wants to be a starter, but all things considered, with the year he's having and with the history he's had, what kind of advice would you be inclined to give Alex Reyes if he continues to perform at this level as a closer?
Well, the one thing that I'm thinking about when you ask me that question is Hicks. And you get Hicks there next year, and he's completely healthy. and he's back. And, you know, he's got the closer stuff, and he's just as good as Reyes as far as I'm concerned. They both have a little tendency to be high on the count, but because of both of their abilities, they can throw a fastball anytime they want on any count. They're both starting to get, I know Hicks last year seemed to have better control of his breaking ball, and sometimes now I watch Reyes. I think he's the same way. And then you got the big arm in Oviedo that's started 15 games and now is pitching in the minors, but he's got a chance to be a big arm starting pitcher. I would, next year, when I look at the Cardinals and the fact that they're going to have Hicks back, I would give Reyes that opportunity because I think he can be a lights-out starter. I think he can be right there with Flaherty, and now they're going to have a formidable starting pitching staff. I think they're going to be a lot better next year, depending if Hicks comes back 100% of where he was.
What about the futures of Miles Mikolas and Adam Wainwright? If you're the Cardinals and Wainwright continues to pitch like this, don't you have to offer him a contract and say, come on back?
You better believe it. I mean, he's been an amazing guy, and, you know, he's a pitcher. He's a competitor. And when he gives up a couple of runs, he walks off that mound in an inning like, that's all you're going to get, boys. I'm going to get you. That's the talent that he's got that most pitchers don't have, and that's the makeup of a winning pitcher. And what he's done the last 2 or 3 years with a fastball that ranges from 89 every once in a while, he gets up to 90, 91. He uses good now on 2 strikes because they're looking for the breaking ball, and he's got great control. He can put it wherever on the outside corner or the inside part of the plate. And you got to offer him a contract if he wants to come back. And I hope that him and Yachty are with the team next year, and even this year. The Cardinals, as far as I'm concerned, and the fact that they're playing in the weakest division in baseball right now, maybe the White Sox are in the American League with Cleveland's injuries and problems. That would be one, too, because it looks like the White Sox got a great chance to go deep into playoffs with their starting pitching. But the Cardinals, I remember Kansas City one year, I was 10.5 games out the All-Star break, and our pitching was terrible. That was the umpire's year to strike, and some of my left-handers stopped using the inside part of the plate, and we had a tough time recovering. And I think we finished, we went in the first place, and our pitching was so mediocre in September, we never won 2 in a row. And yet the year before, or 2 years before that, on August 31st, we were a half game out of first and won 24 out of 25 to win the division by 7 games. So, 70 ball games left, 7 on the loss side. I'm not counting them out. It depends how many games Milwaukee wins.
Whitey, with Yachty or Molina skipping the All-Star game, saying he wants to rest and being the age that he is, how do you, 70 games to go, 8 games out, how do you, as a manager and as a manager of a player's health, how do you determine when you just have to step up and finally say you need to take a day off to a guy who doesn't ever want to take a day off?
Well, Yachty's been amazing. And I know it's nice to want to play every day, but for his good and the fact that, whatever his age is, 38 or 9 or something like that, it's amazing how he plays and how he hits day games after night games. And, he's had a career that when he first came up, great defensively. He replaced Mike Matheny, who was also a great defensive catcher, blocking balls and so forth. And I think sometimes in August and September, Yachty just has to take the day off, especially if you have a Saturday night game and a Sunday afternoon game. I think at his age, he's only a human being. I think he'd be a better defensive catcher the last 2 months because he'd get that one day off and possibly a Monday off on the schedule. And I think that would help him. say, look, you're just a human being. I love the fact that you want to play every day and you give me the thumbs out. But we're gonna cut you down now because, when you look at the record that Neisser had when Yachty was out as a starter, he was 11-2. He handles the pitchers very well, and he's been a good hitter in the minors. He's not what I call you let him play regular and get some at bats where he's a little bit sharper. Why he'd be a wonderful guy to spell Yachty, and it doesn't have to be a Saturday play and a Sunday off. If he wants to play on Sunday, and we'll give him off Saturday, but give him the off day, and you just got to say, which is the way we're going to do it, map it out for him.
Whitey, how did you handle critiquing players in the media? I think some are actually critical, or many people are critical of Mike Schilt because even when they're playing really bad after a game, he'll just gush about how the team showed great heart and guts. I'm wondering, how did you handle things in the media after games?
Well, Rick Hummel always told me that I was nicer to the media and better at the press conferences after the game when they lost. Well, I always figured when you lose, it's a tough job for the writers to write something positive, and so I tried to do that all my life. I never locked the clubhouse. I never kept the press out for a cooling-off period. I'd tell my players sometimes, I said, you guys are playing like you want to get me fired for crying out loud, But, you can't make the game's over. You can't get it back. Mike believes in this team like to this day. He's a positive guy. I think he's done a wonderful job with the press since he's taken the helm. But the big thing is, sometimes you got to really say how it is. There's things that when you're on base percentage and you're swinging at bad 3 and 2 pitches and where you could take a walk, that's not good, and that stops rallies, and that's what's happened the first 92 games this year.
All right, before we let you go, the draft is going on as we speak, and a lot of people don't know this. In addition to being a great executive and a great manager, you ran the farm system for the Mets when they drafted some of that unbelievable talent. Isn't there a great story about you and Nolan Ryan and the drafting of him with the Mets?
Well, Nolan was from Alvin, Texas, a small town outside of Houston. Red Murph was a scout in that territory, and he was telling everybody about Nolan. And I think the last game he pitched at Alvin that year, he had a bad day. And there was about 36 double checkers there to see him. And we got him. Now listen to this. There's a kid that we didn't have radar guns, but I'll guarantee you, if we'd had radar guns, nobody would have lit it up like him, because when he reported to Marion, Virginia, we had a white building in center field, Brunswick Bowling Alley, and no green background. And he pitched one game at Marion, and our manager there said, we better get him out of here. He's going to kill somebody with that background. He was the greatest arm in the history of baseball. Now, I've never seen some of the old-timers. And I know Gibson, Seaver, those guys were power pitchers and could finish games. And when they went through the lineup the third time, they got better, along with the guy Detroit and Houston. But the big thing is, when you look at the stats, that Carlton and Nolan Ryan had 3,000 strikeouts the same week of the season. And I thought that Carlton would strike out more people than Nolan. And yet Nolan struck over 5,000 guys. And at 42 years old, I think he pitched a no-hitter, and he's still throwing the ball in the mid-90s.
Wow. Whitey, great to have you on. It's always an honor. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, I always enjoy talking to you, Frank.
All right, the great Whitey Herzog, the Hall of Famer, joining us. Did he really throw a no-hitter at 42? That's insane. Wow. Double check that. Brian, a little bit of business here, sir.
Whitey Herzog joined us on the Maryville University listener line, and if you are thinking of maybe it's time to wrap up your undergrad education or maybe advanced education and go to graduate school, check out Maryville University. They're online at maryville.edu, and the Gelman team, 590homes.com. If you're looking to sell your home in this seller's market, go to 590homes.com. That'll redirect you to the Gelman team's website where you can read up on all the great strategies they have to sell your home quickly and for the right price. 590homes.com.
All right, Matt, how about an update?
Early May of the 1991 season, when Nolan Ryan was 44 years old, he threw a no-hitter.
44. Wow.
How old was he when Robin Ventura decided to fight him? I wonder if that was before or after his last no-hitter. Because I'll tell you what, Nolan not only was a pitcher with 7 career no-hitters, but I don't know how many times guys rushed the mound, but the one that I remember,
46.
Nolan's record on the mound was
46.
It was his last year in Major League Baseball.
Ventura was 26.
Yeah.
He only pitched in 13 games that year, and Robin Ventura picked the wrong one.
Yeah,
Yep.
and Nolan's 1-0, by the way, after that, after Robin rushed him out on that.
You know, it's a shame.
5-5 on the season. They need to change that 6-5.
Yep.
It's a shame because Robin Ventura is a 2-time All-Star and a 6-time Gold Glover, and all anybody remembers about his career is his getting his.
He was a really good player. You're
Yeah.
right, and that's it. That's the first thing that comes to mind is when he was a 26-year-old
Guy
kid.
hit nearly 300 home runs.
Yeah, he was a really good player.
Of the 100 times I've seen somebody rush the mound, usually it's they rush the mound and the pitcher will throw a glove at him, or there'll be a wild swing, or the third party will arrive at the same time. Nolan's the only pitcher I ever saw when somebody rushed the mound. He actually got the guy in a headlock and held him there while he pumped him. It was an amazing catch by Nolan Ryan to keep his head there.
Is there like a well talked about story about what happened to Nolan Ryan between 71 with the Mets and then 72 with the Angels? And like what like he's 10-14, and then next year he leaves the Mets, and then 20 years of just absolute pitching dominance.
He wrote an autobiography that I read. I don't know if it was an autobiography or a biography, but he was certainly quoted in it. And there were games in California, Frank, in which Nolan Ryan would pitch a complete game with like 8 walks and like 12 strikeouts, and his pitch count would be way over 200.
Yeah.
And he would do that with regularity.
And the thing, too, is they would try to get him on the primetime game a lot. So he'd be in that 5 o'clock time period where with the shadows and the sun throwing 103,
Right.
is impossible to hit. All right. You are actually a big fan of UFC, correct?
I'm a decent fan of it. I mean, I'll watch it when there's like a title fight that occurs. I watched the fight Saturday night. You know, it was kind of.
So what did you pay for it?
I didn't pay anything for it. I mooched off somebody who streamed it, kind of
Would that have cost $100 for?
Yeah.
And the fight lasted 1 round.
Right. Well, some of the earlier rounds were free to watch, and those were great fights, by the way. But to get that big title fight, you had to pay that kind of money. You know, one of the things that really surprised me was that UFC was kind of tooting its own horn. They were talking about the top 3 compensated athletes in 2021. Can you guess who those are? Athletes in the world.
McGregor
Is number 1.
Wow.
$180 million. The guy is expected to make this year off of fights and obviously primarily off endorsements,
This is for 1 year?
It's for this year, which is how Tiger and Phil made most of their money when they were the top compensated athletes. 90% of it was endorsement money.
Do you know the rest of the list? Is it soccer players after that?
It's Messi 2 at 130, and then Ronaldo is after that. So there was 1, 2, 3. But for Conor McGregor to be the number 1 compensated quote unquote athlete in the world by $50 million over the number 2 athlete, to have his leg broken, which is unfortunate, but for him to throw the terrible temper tantrum that a 2-year-old would throw when they tried to take him off of the mat, and then for Poirier, who was there with his wife, and then he called her a really vulgar name and referred to. It's just so disgusting, his behavior. You know, this is the guy that throws chairs at buses under arenas, and he's the worst loser in the history of losers. And he's got like 7, and even some guys are coming out on Twitter today and other social media and saying he's done. You just say goodbye to the guy and send him off to pasture.
All right, a couple of quick texts here. The UFC event cost $70. The Bo Weevil of Beeville Mill, guys, Whitey Herzog, 90 years of age, yet knows just about every statistic of every Cardinals player. Ask Whitey a question. He'll give you an answer. Stays up till 11 p.m. every night watching West Coast baseball games. Wow, what a treasure. Four Finger Guy says he likes the new guy. He's referring to you, Tim, so you're getting a good response. Interleague play and C-League killed the All-Star game. No pride really in the game for either league anymore.
Or it was a dumb idea having the All-Star game matter.
No, I think it's just expanded broadcasting. I mean, now you watch these guys a lot more than 40 years ago, or maybe one of the few times you had to watch Reggie Jackson was the All-Star game. Now a player of Jackson's caliber is on TV, national TV a lot, and you can just buy a package that allows you to watch them whenever you want.
I always said to make those other All-Star games better, make it winner gets paid, loser gets nothing. Because money's the only thing that drives some of these guys. You know, if you had a substantial piece of money, let's say
if there's a 50-50 chance you're not going to make any money, wouldn't you have more people not play?
Well,
of course, they all have incentives. They all make 25 to 50 to 100,000 for making the All-Star.
Right. I don't know. I guess you'd have to. That's probably an athlete by athlete, case by case comparison. But I would think that most of them would welcome the honor of even being invited to the game. And then once they realize there's a significant amount of money on the line, especially the NBA, as much trash talking as goes down, I think the fourth quarter of an NBA game, of an NBA All-Star game, in which the winner gets paid and the loser doesn't, you see some defense.
Well, you actually do. You have seen it the last couple of games, the way they've reformatted the way the game is scored. The last 5 or 6 minutes of an NBA All-Star game was actually pretty good lately. Pete Alonso, by the way, made $1.17 million in his career, and he's made $2 million from the Derby. So
I've always said if you want to try to, because so money is one way of doing it. If you really want to use the home run derby as a marketing tool to really show off your young talent, instead of giving the winner $1 million or whatever, say the winner gets one less year of arbitration.
Oh, boy.
So you hit free agency.
That's worth way more than $1 million.
So you hit free agency after 5 years instead of after 6.
That's worth way more than $1 million.
You'll have young players knocking at the door to participate in the Derby if you do that.